Our country's businesses see a great profit to be made in XIA. Thus, they approach the king of Alexandria and make a business proposition. They suggest that were there roads to the mountains and step plantations instead of steep edges, the crop could be increased 1,000-fold. The king promptly suggested that his country was too poor to do that kind of work, and they didn't know how to do it even if they had the money. So these shrewd businessmen got in there and said, "Look, we'll do it. We'll do all this stuff, and we'll make these things so that the plants can grow up there, and we'll put the dirt up there, and we'll make sure they're growing properly, and we'll harvest them properly, and we'll ship them all over the world for the cure of cancer, and we'll pay you a tremendous amount of money." And the king, being no fool, said they were offering him a fortune, and so he said, okay. As time went on, the king, being so wealthy, obviously was married very quickly and had children. Children got up to the age where they're ready to go to college, and the king thought it would be best to send them to colleges in the United States, since everybody knew the education there was much better, and he could afford it without any problem at all. Well, after several years in college, his children came back home with some disturbing news. They had become Americanized and soon saw the truth of the value of XIA. They came home and demanded that the king had made a terrible mistake. They brought the truth to the king, and he became enraged. Soon the plantations became nationalized, and the American businessmen were kicked out. Now, believe me, this happens over and over and over and over. But, it takes 20 years to get a child at the point where they're in college. Of course, the businessmen knew this would happen sooner or later, and they had planned for its eventuality. The profits were so high they were very wealthy and didn't care anyway. They did, however, apply for government assistance to help pay for their tremendous losses. After all, it wasn't their fault that the king of Alexandria nationalized their plantations. They had plantations. It wasn't their fault that they told the government that it wasn't their fault and their plantation had nationalized. Pay me, pay me. The government did. Does it sound familiar? It should. It's been happening and happening and happening. Did we do that? Yeah. Are we ashamed of it? No, we don't even know what happened. The average person doesn't know what happened. Did we allow it? Yeah, we allowed it by allowing it. Are we still allowing it? Yep. Still happening over and over again. So what they said is that system should stop as we see what we were doing. That system should be stopped by us as we begin to see what it is that we're doing. The concept here is that Earth is a spaceship and we're just passengers. Each country has its resources, and when those resources are gone, they're gone. As that is seen, it will take care of itself in the long run. However, in the short run, it should be clear that when you open the example country to trade with other countries, there will be problems. Most countries will have an advantage on us because they have to pay, because we have to play by a fair set of rules. We have to pay our employees and blah blah. On the other hand, they can cheat their employees and pollute the earth and make inferior or unsafe products, or just don't have to follow our new rules. What's the solution? First, it is understood that we aren't going to make other countries do anything. Right? We aren't going to make them do anything with that we decided. Block their borders? Sure. Make them do something. If their government and business practices are such that they cause the things that were just discussed above, we can say you can't sell here. In other words, we can say you have to meet these standards of trade if you want to trade in this country. That makes the playing field level. If they don't want to pay their employees a minimum wage, which is equal to ours, do not trade with them until they do. If they pollute, and you can prove it, don't trade with them until they don't. If their product is junk, don't trade with them until they get it up to acceptable levels. Demand a guarantee that the products are safe and as represented. Use the new law on fraud to correct the problem. If we have a technology to find these things out, correct them. what are they saying? Take some time to make these people play on a standard level playing field. If they're not paying their employees, stop dealing with them. If they're polluting their country, stop dealing with them. If it's like you can't get them to do anything, but you can stop them from polluting the world, because anything that leaves their borders is restricted. You can stop them from selling in the United States because their products are not up to standard, or they get up to standard and they go ahead and compete normally and reasonably, and there you are, equal basis, everybody's there. So they say basically we have to begin to view this earth as it truly is. We are only visitors on this spaceship with limited resources. Pollute it or ravage it for your own profit, and you will again see the destruction seen so many times before. What did they say? Pollute it or ravage it for your own profit, and you will again see the destruction seen so many times before. Now, are we going to go into that? Nah. No, we aren't. We've seen destruction over and over again. Why have we seen destruction over and over again? They say the gods were mad and blah 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 and blah. If you knew the truth, basically, fundamentally, you would see that if the slaves don't take it into their own hands and destroy the country and get rid of slavery, then the earth itself takes its revenge. They say even the fallen one understands that truth. From the highest to the lowest, it is understood. It is only man that has been told and told and told that he believes he can have dominion over the earth. What fools these mere mortals be. What do they say? They say you're a damn fool if you think that you can have dominion over the earth. That isn't why you're here. That's what you were told by the false god, but that's Book 5. So they say, so demand the playing fields of trade be equal, demand that the other countries keep their world clean, and if they don't, forget about buying from them. You don't have to have a government to make all those rules. You can do it on your own by just simply not buying from them. If you have People's Trust News researchers and they're out there researching and they say the quality is terrible, and the pollution in the country is terrible, and the wages are terrible, don't buy from them. Oh, it's cheaper. Well, you're making more money now. Cheaper doesn't really make that much difference, They say, does it sound simple? It is. And that's what they say. It is simple. So they say as we come to the close of chapter 3, there are concepts that must be given that don't really fit any other place. We'll just throw them out to you for your understanding. The first is the understanding that were these ideas incorporated and you did end up with more free time, you would be faced with the problem of what to do with your new free time. Now you may think that won't be a problem, but it will be. The thrust of this whole book 4 is to help you see what a mess you are living in, how to change it. As you come to an understanding and make the changes that are needed to get you to the point where you begin to you see this is bad, fix it, this is bad, fix it. As that becomes a reality, you begin to realize that you've been fooled into thinking that things take the place of quality or make you a better person or give you love. And as you begin to realize that those things aren't true, one of the things that happens is you'll have more time to think about it. You might grow up a little bit more than you are now. You won't be as, your structured morality will crash, and you'll start saying, what's really true here? It's like, get the driver out of the car. The car is irrelevant. Hey, I'd like to know you, driver. Get the soul away from the body and in concept, and find out who's really there and what they're doing, and not all this artificial, look at me, I have a beautiful car, so I must be beautiful. That's the kind of thing that you're going to end up looking at, and you won't be able to help it because you'll have more time to think. So they say we've discussed the basic needs of life, and from there you begin to choose the wants of life. What do you want out of life? We will discuss that problem at greater length in Chapter 4, which is on education. So the second concept they're throwing at you, which didn't really fit much of anywhere else, is the concept of health and its relation to the economy. In a very short while, we'll have to make some very difficult decisions about our health care. As is so often the case, your government has chosen to downplay a crisis so they don't have your safe little lives disturbed. We would suggest that you don't have a safe little life, and you might as well get it disturbed and fixed. And you will see that, and you will see the solutions to it, and you'll see the best way to go about getting there. So the time will come when we must face some difficult decisions. Having thus far refused to run from tough decisions, we will take this one on head on also. We must prioritize our health care. Now, they talked about that before. They're going to talk about it again. A little bit more in detail, because they looked at what they said before and they said, oh, that wasn't enough. We didn't cover enough. So there will only be so much in terms of resources that can be given to health. After that, you have to take from one person to give to another. Then the tough decisions come. Rather than state each one, we would rather give you priorities and allow you to choose from there. A child in the making must share the highest priority with those who have the most to give to society. We would keep a child or a Christ, a child who might become a Christ, and for those of you who have that religious orientation, that they're just trying to get you to see it, we would keep that child alive to fulfill his or her destiny before the 90-year-old man or woman. Oh, and we've already talked about it. You have a right to die when the time comes. But they're saying it might even get worse than that. If a person is terminally ill, there's no sense keeping him or her alive and in misery. Comfort and preparation are needed here. As we have said before, when it's time, it is time, not before, and also not after. We must come to the understanding that it is honorable to give up hundreds of thousands of dollars in operating and treatment costs for another few months of life. A person who gives that cost over to the savings of many children's life must be honored. Why can't we see that life is only a moment of time? Give honor to those who would choose, in quotation marks, to pass on, leaving the resources to those who have a life yet to live. Put an end to the warehousing of our old. Give them an honorable way to go. Number 4, even terminally ill must have a right. Even the terminally ill must have a right to be so honored. We may have a cure someday, but for now, if a person chooses not to be treated so that they may just live a little bit longer, give them the honor and dignity due them. Find a way to comfort them and their loved ones and not prolong their misery and make their families hate them. And believe me, that's what's happening now, and nobody wants to talk about it. Put the blinders on, head in the sand. Don't find out what you're doing to the old people. They say, comfort them. Comfort the people that are going to lose them. Teach them, what reality is, and stop giving them all these lies. Don't prolong the person's misery and end up making when you're in misery, you don't want to talk to people, and your family's coming and they want to talk to you, and they want to resolve some things that they did that were wrong, and you don't want to have anything to do with them, and by the time you're done, you hate them and they hate you. Can't you find a way to comfort the person so he's not in pain? And can't you find a way to get the negotiation of, if I'd only said this, taken care of, get people to understand that they have to do that, and keep the family from hating each other, and let the person go happily, and you understand. They say you should have the idea by now. As your loved one leaves you, you'll come to understand that they aren't gone for long. You will see them again, and the reunion there will be far better than the little reunions you've been given here on Earth. They slide over that one real quick, and again, the concept here is that when a person dies, they're not gone. Their body's gone, but they're not gone. And will you see them again? Absolutely. There's no question about it. Not told to you by anybody in your religion, but it's truth all the same. So at that point, the other thing they point to, they say that you need to get a concept of it and a need, and we really didn't have a place to put it, so we put it here, is the need for a universal language required for all international transactions. And what did they say? We need a universal language to be taught alongside of each country's language to help bring an end to the misunderstandings. It seems that if money is the motivation, things get done. If we would trade with another country or they with us, a universal language must be made mandatory. Go to Esperanto or some other language that is made up for all taking the best parts of all the existing languages and demand that it be used for trade. If you want to trade with us, you have to learn this language. If you want, if you're going to travel to another country, they have to learn the language, and so do you. Get a universal language, and the tourists have to learn it, and anybody that goes to another country has to know it, and you finally get to the point where you realize that wow, these people are all the same. I mean, they're just like us. So I can actually talk to them and see that they're the same as us, and all of a sudden the game players are done. How are you going to go to war with people that you've talked to and you know dang well they just want to live like you just want to live, and they don't have it? I always say let the politicians go to war. Not even their kids. Let them get a baseball bat and go at each other. That's not going to happen. They're not going to get hurt. But that's one of the things they're recommending. Get a universal language going and make it mandatory, and make it mandatory in the United States. And then if any other country wants to deal with you and the fact that you have money and you're going to another country, they'll learn the language too, and all of a sudden you can talk to the taxi driver or the farmer or the whoever. You can actually talk to them, and you find out, oh, they're not these evil people that we were told they were. They're just normal people. What a wonderful thing that would be. So you get to the point where you begin to see the truth of these things, then in closing, they say, we would like to say that we are seeking the highest good in an economy. A time to work, a time to play, a time to sleep, and a time to ponder our existence. With that balance, each of us will at least have a chance to understand that we are here to make choices each day. Those choices will take you to a fellowship of Father and your fellow souls, the ones that stay there or are there, or you'll choose to stay on your own planet and rule as a god in the what they call shadow world or shadow universe. So they say choices, 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 day in, day out. Take time to think about it. Make time to think about it. And that's what they're trying to give you. And with that, we move on to the next chapter, which is a chapter on education. We have come to the last chapter in Book 4, and that chapter is on education. And they start out saying that in the chapter on government, we discuss the concept that any group numbering over 12 people trying to accomplish anything would be called a bureaucracy. We suggested that the only people who rise to the top of a bureaucracy are those that are best bureaucrats. Do you understand what that means? Look at the school system. If what we say is the truth, we should find by now bureaucrats at the top of the school system, not teachers. We would challenge any teacher in any school system in this country to say with a straight face that their school is not run by politics as a major operating factor. Well, Don't think we'll have anybody saying that politics isn't in my school. If you can say that, you're definitely an exception. So they say, have we made our point? If not, ask yourself this question. How well does a politician teach children? How well does a teacher teach when there is so much politics in schools? Guess they kind of made their point there, didn't they? So then they start out with a history lesson. And why a history lesson? They really want you to get the concept of where we went wrong, and so the history lesson is a good place to start. They say, well, with that point made, we will move to a light history lesson on the school system. There was a need to teach our children about life in a more uniform way before schools were a common institution, probably before schools even existed. Each parent couldn't take the time or didn't have the talent to teach all that was needed. Now, the generation now doesn't realize that back in the time before schools, there wasn't any time to do anything. You got up, you ate, you worked until it got dark, and you might possibly have read a book, but I doubt it, and you just went to bed and got up and worked and went to bed. Wasn't a whole lot of other things going on. Each parent couldn't take the time or didn't have the talent to teach what was needed. Thus, it came about that teachers were chosen to accomplish the task. How was the teacher chosen? At first, various people were asked what they knew about each subject in an effort to find someone who knew enough that they might be a candidate for the position of teacher. The obvious choice was a person who knew the most about many subjects that the parent wanted to be taught. Using that and other factors, a teacher was then chosen. Back in the beginning, it went something like this. A group of parents, seeing the need for their children to know more than can be taught by the parents, decided to get together and hire a person to teach their children. They made it known that they were looking for someone who might take the job. As the applicants came in, the parents asked them questions about various subjects in an effort to find the one who knew enough to teach their children. The next step was weeding out those applicants who were obviously not qualified. That left maybe 5 applicants. Those 5 were again examined, and the best applicant was chosen. They now had a teacher. The school was in operation, and the children began learning much more rapidly and uniformly than ever before. A bureaucratic success. But a problem rears its ugly head. Others began to see the success and wanted the same system in their little towns also. Soon the need for teachers was higher than the availability. Okay, no problem. They decided in their far-seeing wisdom to institute higher education. Now they had a system that could work for them, and that higher education system could test the applicants, determine their suitability, teach them the subject, certify that they were qualified as teachers, and present them as ready-made choice to the parent. A second bureaucratic success. Problem solved, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. Whoa. So what went wrong? Let's go back to the beginning and see. We want to have our children learn more and in a more uniform manner. Nothing wrong with that. We made teaching posts available and took applications. Nothing wrong with that. Those applied were tested, and we interviewed the top 5 in scoring and picked the one who seemed to be the best to us. Again, no problem seen here. That teacher began to teach our children, and the children learned more and in a more uniform manner. We got exactly what we wanted. As the needs for more teachers became obvious, the same system of testing and interviewing was used to find the best applicant. They were then taught the subjects by what might be called super teachers, or professors, or anyway, those people that were knowledgeable enough so that they could actually teach a teacher to teach the children because they knew the subject. And those super teachers were those who knew much more about an individual subject than the average teacher. These super teachers, soon called professors, were to teach the students their specific subjects. Now, the students that they had weren't the children, they were the soon-to-be teachers, you understand. So we have a super teacher called a professor, and he's going to teach these teachers that are going to teach your children specific subjects. If they passed the requirements of that professor, they were certified to be able to teach that subject. Each subject was taught the same way, and soon the student could teach many subjects and was ready to apply for a job as a teacher. It wasn't long after that the professor became too busy teaching to be involved with the administration of higher education system and passed those duties over to like an administration bureaucracy. Bureaucrats. The administration gladly took over all such duties and became the driving force and directional leader of all educational institutes. Now this all looks good, so where's the error that caused us to so forcefully holler foul? Go back to the parents and their testing and interviewing of the applicant for the teaching job. That was a two-part procedure. They found the highest score. You know that. In other words, they had examined those people that applied and determined how much they knew about every subject. And then they gave interview. Why did they test their applicants? To find out how much they knew about the subject to be taught. And that was the first thing. And then remember that reason. Why did they interview the applicant? To weed out the child molesters, sick people, and anyone who just didn't seem quite right to them. After all, these were their children, and they had to be taught by this person. Okay, now you see what they're saying there's two parts of this teaching thing. The first one back then was, do you know the subject? And they were tested to see if they knew the subject. Okay, they passed that. Then they were interviewed. Then they were interviewed to what? Keep out the sick people, basically, because, I mean, these people are going to be teaching your children. You want the right people teaching your children. So, you know, it's right here they say that we begin to see the error creeping in. They tested the potential teacher to determine how much the applicant knew, and then they interviewed the applicant to determine what? Just what was error one. In the beginning, they did weed out the unacceptable with that interview, but they also unconsciously made a judgment as to their ability to teach. Ability to teach? What good to know all there is to know about every subject, look good, smell good, and have impeccable standing in the community if you can't teach children? Major error number one. Now, you know, I'm going to say, hey, the universities, they check to see if a person can teach. So they determine if they're okay people, and they determine if they've got a good grasp of the subject, and if they pass all those things, they get a degree. What's wrong here? And so they say the need was to have our children learn the subject. If you can't teach, how does the child learn? There should be a little easy to see now. Back then, just placing a book in front of a child and grunting some instructions wasn't enough to gain improvement. You know, they weren't being taught. So it didn't, not that they didn't have fantastic teachers, because, you know, they did, but you know, you're going to see more of a problem now, because it's going to take a teacher, not somebody just throwing a book at you. And the children learn, and you know, that's what, you know, children do automatically. So if you put a book in front of them, they're going to learn. So it wasn't that difficult to become a successful teacher back then. Now we need more.